want to sing Michael Jackson. I'm starting with the hand in you. Okay, I hear you. Do. All right. It feels hypocritical, Katie, to speak to you in response to your question. And I mean that sincerely, but she brings up a good point. And I think, again, this is something that the committee can look at in terms of, is there a place for it in our licensure to encourage that? I mean, you can't require it at this conference, but I mean, in the spirit of what we're trying to do, the goal is trying to increase our language skills. And so it's just a good reminder how we do that. Okay. And Katie said she agreed. You should have responded. It's a technology thing. Okay. Moving on. Who is our next? Kaylin, you had a question or a comment? All right, come on up. It's up to you. No,
I actually have two comments. One is more of a personal feeling that I have. I think that we need a bachelor's degree for all levels of licensure. Let me back up. I was part of the subcommittee that came up with that tier level for licensure. The reason I think that we should have a bachelor's for all is because all college classes or intermediate interpreters work in that setting. And BRS topics come up, college classes deal with some very serious topics. You need these extra linguistic knowledge pieces that you can only get if you have a bachelor's degree. A bachelor's degree isn't perfect, and I understand that, but with more training, coming into experiencing different topics, things like that will help an interpreter. So I really do feel that a bachelor's is necessary for the hearing interpreters, the three-tiered licensure for hearing interpreters. In terms of a bachelor's for the intermediate or the green level for deaf licensure, having heard what I heard today, I understand why it's not required. A lot of hearing interpreters are recent grads, they're young, they're 20, 21 years old, and so they have the time to do it now. Oftentimes, deaf interpreters or CDIs are 40 years of age. They come into the profession much, much later. I really don't think that you can compare. There's not a comparison here. So I just wanted to say that why I feel that tiered hearing interpreters need a bachelor's, and I understand now why for the deaf interpreter licensure it's different. My second comment. It's a little bit, wow, okay. About the 6 years, the 6-year period to get certified. This is very personal. I graduated on an even year. So for licensure here, I needed to get, we know that licensure needs to be renewed every odd year, so I had only 5 years. I graduated in May, and the licensure went into effect in August. So from May to August was a window of time. That was a year for me. So it was really 4.5 years was was the expectation for me, not 6. So it really depends on when you graduated. I don't want you to think that it's just a blanket 6 years for all of us, because it wasn't for me. I'm being honest, I took the test 6 times myself. Every 6 months I sat for the test. You can't tell me I didn't try my damnedest. I volunteer everywhere. I work everywhere. I took workshop after workshop. I had a lot of deaf mentors, hearing mentors. I worked at Sorensen in the STAR program with Leah. I worked with Lisa Perry Burkhart. You can't tell me I didn't try everything. I did. And I could cry right now. This is really personal for me. 6 years. In a perfect world, it would be okay if the test itself, the vetting, the raters was just ideal. But a 20% pass rate? Really? From my experience, like actually living it, it's not really about the 6-year requirement at all. Everything has to fall into place for the individual who takes the test, and it didn't for me. And it didn't for a lot of people who graduated in my cohort and the cohort before me. We were stuck in a crap system. My class, had 11 people, I think? And only 2 passed. 2 have passed so far out of the 11. A lot of people in my class are really amazing interpreters. You couldn't tell them that they're not motivated. You can't look at them in the face and say that they didn't work hard or that they're lazy. Most of them failed multiple times. I failed 5 times before I finally passed. And that's because I paid thousands upon thousands of dollars for mentoring, classes, workshops. I could be all day telling you what I did. No one can tell me that I didn't try. Not a single person. That's all I wanted to say.
I appreciate folks' comments, and I know, hello. I appreciate the comments, and I again, we've talked about this before in previous task force meetings, and it's well documented, the struggle on both sides from the deaf community perspective and from the interpreting perspective. I'm going to ask that for tonight, though. We are looking for your feedback on the recommendations that were made, and so that we have something tangible about what you like, what you don't like, what you agree with, what you don't disagree with. Because we're going to get sidetracked, and I don't want us to go down that path. I think we know what the issues are, we know what the struggles are. Again, working on being unified, not divided. That's the only way I really see us moving positively in the future. With that, I'd like to, go ahead, Mike.
Hello again. This is Mike Mapucci. Henry had mentioned asset. I do like that idea. I agree with what we heard from Henry. Going back to Katie's comment and her feeling of attending WISRID and seeing a bunch of hearing interpreters talking and not signing, I agree. When I go to that conference, I feel like committing suicide, I'm telling you. I'm signing, you guys have access to what I'm saying, but I don't have access to what you're saying. I would like to see that improved. And I'm sure we can make it happen. I believe it. We can. In terms of the bachelor's degree for deaf interpreters, I disagree. I agree with what Kaylin said. Pam, just wait, I was going to explain myself. What Kaylin said is true. Many of us come to this profession in the middle of our life. In the DC area, or Massachusetts area, Seattle area, there are large numbers of deaf interpreters. Maybe their requirements are different for good reason. But honestly, who's going to relocate to Wisconsin to be a deaf interpreter? The community is small. You know, DC, Austin, Seattle, there's a larger draw there. It's sad. I agree, it is sad. I just don't want to make it impossible, the benchmark to be so high that we cannot draw individuals to this field. So let's keep it where it is, let it grow, and we can re-evaluate it in years' time. Lastly, Kaylin shared her struggles. I feel bad. I feel bad that not just you, Kaylin, but that you struggle, that many of you have struggled. You tried, you couldn't pass the test. We know that ITP graduation and the period to certification, there's a gap there. And that's something that we want to address. This new generation of interpreters coming up behind you, behind us, I want to have a path and a philosophy that is successful, that where you can thrive, that meets you where you are. We're hoping to change that gap. We want to see an improvement. I believe it can happen. You said how many passed out of your class, your cohort? So out of 11 students, 2 have passed? That's crazy. That's like a 12% pass rate. I want to see at least 50% pass rate. So from ITP graduation to certification, we need to fix that gap. That's the problem. My point with mentioning the 6 years was that there's no push. There's no sense of urgency. Most of you guys, you might have been on the wrong path, I'm sorry to tell you. You did do stuff. I'm not denying you that. You think you did the right thing, but I don't think you did, I'm sorry. The best way to develop a language is being with us in the community. We're not trying to hide anything from you. That's the only way, it's the only path, and it's free. It doesn't cost you a thing. Come and be with us. There's no membership fee. Just come. Pam is saying it's not true. You might have to buy someone a beer or a glass of wine. And Mike is saying, I don't disagree. She is right. I think that's all I wanted to say. Jake's just reiterating that Pam had a little bit of a jest back to Mike, that it does cost you something from time to time, like a beer or wine, so it's not entirely free. Chair difficulties.
That's good. All right, next, moving on down the line. Brittany, Deb. Linda, Scotty, Scott, oh, it's my turn.
Scotty's saying, finally. Ugh.
All right, hello. I know I have short man syndrome here. You might have to adjust the camera. Compared to Pam over here. Anyways, so hello everyone. I'm Scotty Allen. I'm signing Mrs. I am a sign language interpreter here in Wisconsin. So I just wanted to add a couple comments here, so that's why I got my notes. I just wanted to highlight a few of these things that we've been discussing. So for a deaf interpreter, a non-certified interpreter, that language that we're using for that, there was discussion of maybe the ASL proficiency exam, the ASLPI, of taking that as part of the requirement for language assessment. I'm not trying to poo-poo that assessment, but I have some criticisms about how they are looking at deaf interpreters. So, it's not my personal criticism, I've just seen other comments about it. And there are problems that they've had within the evaluation before. And this is something that I've learned through my experience with Gallaudet University. So that ASLPI was set up through an organization, through RIT. Or I'm sorry, the ASLPI was set up through Gallaudet, but there is a separate exam called the SCPI, SCPI. Now that SCPI was set up through RIT. Yeah, there's SCPI. So it's Sign Communication Proficiency Interview. And actually individuals who take that, there's a lot of feedback that they get from that exam. And it's not specific to just American Sign Language. But I'm just saying, if we're going to require it of deaf interpreters to evaluate their ASL skills, I think we should require it of hearing interpreters. Because if you think about it, interpreters have to have competencies in language, culture, and interpreting, the skill to interpret itself. So I felt that as a language competency, I think we should require both deaf interpreters and hearing interpreters the ASLPI or some other ASL language assessment, such as the SCPI. Plus, it would help address what Katie had said earlier about evaluating the signing aspect of language for requirement. Another comment. Currently, the piloted test for the BEI, and maybe I'm wrong, correct me please, but they are trying to establish a deaf interpreter exam, but I thought they already did that. Well, don't they have the knowledge exam? And it is in pilot form, but I thought they already have a CEI knowledge exam, so there's a performance and a knowledge exam. And Pam is stating, we have that for the committee to investigate, for the CEI-DI committee to investigate the BEI as far as knowledge versus performance exam. And again, maybe I'm wrong and I can talk with Ashley later, but I thought, like Illinois, for example, I thought that they already have that deaf interpreter knowledge exam, but perhaps I'm wrong. So I just thought I'd throw it out there that they at least may have that knowledge exam available now that could be added as a requirement. And Ashley said she'll look into it. Some of you may know or not that I do work as a professor at Columbia College in Chicago. Yeah, once a week I drive down there. It is a long drive, and so I'm teaching there currently, and I've been involved in their community for a while now, and I'm looking Illinois as a whole. They have, for example, Harper College is a 2-year degree program. Columbia has a program for interpreting. They have some in the southern Illinois area as well. Now, when I meet their students, I ask what their goal is, and they said, well, licensure. Like, okay, well, that's all. What about certification? So Illinois' licensure law has 4 levels. It's a 4-leveled system. I understand we have a 3-leveled system that we would be proposing, but why not include that 4th level? Theirs is actually the red level. It's the most basic level, or minimum skill competency. So it would require, say for example, the test of English proficiency from BEI, and the BEI basic, I believe. So that is their most entry level. And Pam is disagreeing about Illinois' license.
It's not that, so I'm looking at.
I'm going to look right now. Okay. Well, I just was wondering why a 3-level versus a 4-level and not mimic their type of licensure. I mean, as an entry level, you know, you could eliminate the 4-year degree. It could be a 2-year degree requirement. And looking at our current proposal, you have a lot of what you can do, and I felt that I think I don't agree with all those levels in there. We want to make sure the settings for which you work in the 3-level system may require a 4th level.
You might want to see it, yeah. Okay. So to respond to that, the red level is because in the state of Wisconsin, the way that it currently states today is that you have to have some sort of verification, which was the WIDA. And so I would hate to see us regress back to having nothing in place, I mean, other than maybe some training. You know what I mean? So that the red level doesn't require the TEP, doesn't require the basic. It's just you are at that introductory level. I have to look at it again, but that was the decision of the subcommittee that we thought it would. That's not the direction that we're headed. So at a minimum, where we stand today as a state, the intermediate level seems already in place. Like we're already doing that. And just having conversations with deaf individuals, it's already confusing as it is to understand the difference between a restricted interpreter and an interpreter that possesses a renewable license. And there's going to be a nice transition happening if we move to this. What can we do to minimize the confusion as much as possible? So I feel that that red category would be a little dangerous for me. I think that might open up something that I don't know if we want to go down that road, I guess. I just think I would like to have some sort of minimal credential to that. So I think that was part of the discussion. Anybody else in the subcommittee can speak up. 2, you talked about an ASLPI or a Skippy as an alternative for both hearing interpreters and deaf interpreters. I would argue that the programs have a lot of screenings in place, and the tests that are out there, the BEI and the NIC, you have to have a level of competency to be able to pass that. You know what I mean? So that's inherent to the exams. We're already asking the interpreters to spend a ton of money on education and workshops and professional development and testing. And to throw on another test, I think at this point would again, I think we would hurt interpreters and not increase the pool that we so desperately need. Krista?
You want to just add to, for your first comment about why we kind of decided to mix the red level is we felt that was more of volunteer type of work versus these 3 were more paid, so we wanted to include those in the licensure. Versus this, we felt like for big parties, basic level coming out of ITP that you aren't necessarily paid for is volunteer, so do we really need to include those in the licensure, depending on what we want under there.
Thank you for that clarification, and we will, again, the way that the law stands today clarifies if you are not paid for services, you don't need a license. And I think we will continue with that language. So that, again, is already inherent in current practice. It just becomes more paperwork, because then I have to make all students be red people and have the red levels. And it's just more paperwork, you know what I mean? It just adds to an already cumbersome system that we have.
This is Scotty again. I do understand about Illinois' red level, and we're not going to follow it. That's fine, but I'm also thinking maybe we could come up with another requirement for a 4th level. And Pam stated we don't want confusion added to what's already confusing, and limiting what they can and cannot do. And I think having that 4th level out and adding something else into those 3 levels makes it confusing in my eyes. And as a teacher, I'd just like to know how that will work when I teach students about it. That was an interpreter error. Scotty?
I'm sorry, do you mind backing up? As a teacher. So when you guys are out there teaching the deaf community and educating them about this coloring system and what work settings are appropriate for those coloring systems, why not just add one more red level? It's just one more color. I'm sure that they could understand that if it's just a colored system. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
And that will be in the hands of the legislative task force coming soon.
Actually did look into it. There is a knowledge test. There is a BEI knowledge test for deaf individuals to take. Yes, there is one.
More comments?
So my question, I wanted to draw a comparison between the widow So the WIDA and the BEI both have leveling systems, but they're totally different. So I'm wondering if we've looked into how they in fact compare. I know someone who took the WIDA and didn't pass it, but they took the BEI, the basic, and they told me that it was easy by comparison. So what do we do with that? Like, where is the research? Like, if a WIDA 2.2 is supposed to be equivalent to the BEI basic, does that really hold water? Like, how have we looked into that? That was my one question. So if people are taking both exams, where do they fall in the process? How do they know what to do next? Can we use those people to research and see? And I do have more. Another question. So here in Wisconsin, our expectations for interpreters are really high, which is awesome. It's a good thing. We should have the best interpreters every day. But I was wondering, in terms of other states, what their opinions might be. Like, what do their ITP programs look like? Are they the same as us? Are they as rigorous? Really, our state's expectations are very high. So let's say I graduate the ITP here, and I feel like I'm not ready to work. But in a different state, they'll say recent graduates